Next, an interview with the co-founder of Black Voters Matter Fund and Black Voters Matter Capacity Building Institute, and also the visionary founder and co-anchor of the regional network called the Southern Black Girls and Women's Consortium. She's also the 2020 Hauser Leader at the Center for Public Leadership at Harvard Kennedy School, the 2020 Leader in Practice at Harvard Kennedy School's Women and Public Policy Program, and 2021 American Democracy Fellow at the Charles Warren Center, also at Harvard. So please welcome the amazing Latosha Brown. Hi, Latosha. How are you?
I'm well. How are you doing today?
It was amazing listing your accolades. It was really quite remarkable to hear that. Now, in terms of help, what I feel like our viewers need is more understanding of why there isn't even a need for a Black Voters Matters Fund and a Black Voters Matters Capacity Building Institute. Can you tell us more about why it's needed?
Absolutely. We created, Cliff Albright, who's the other founder, and I created the organization in 2016. We felt like there was a need to create an organization that would engage people in the democratic process, that was outside of the tradition of political parties or even individuals, candidates. And so much of the political process has been dependent upon political candidates and parties. We believe that we need to enact our citizenship and that we would organize in our communities to build this organization that will build independent Black political power so that we can engage in the process, not just as participants, but that we could actually have a framework of power that as we're trying to advance our communities, have policy and have put policy in place that is more aligned to the vision that we have for ourselves and our community, and also hold those accountable who are serving in roles of political leadership. And so we created both of the organizations. One organization is a C4, which allows us to do some political work. And the second organization is a C3, which is non-political, is nonpartisan, which is the bulk of our work. We wanted to do three things. We wanted to engage people around shifting their frame of seeing themselves and their power and engaging in this political process. The second thing is we wanted to shift the narrative around the message of who is deserving of resources, who are deserving of power, that we would actually recenter it instead of it being about parties or political candidates, that it would actually be about people. So it'd be a people-centered approach. And then the third thing we wanted to do is we wanted to help build the capacity of grassroots organizations that were doing the work on the ground so that we could build out an ecosystem of organizations, some that do civic engagement work, some that are doing prison abolitionist work, some of them are doing social service work, but that we saw ourselves as citizens, we saw ourselves as visionaries, that our collective work could actually make the change and shift the political landscape.
But this is not just in the United States, right? Can you tell us a bit more about the growth of the Black Voters Matter movement internationally?
So we have been our base has been in the U.S. It has been in the Southern U.S., because a lot of when you look at what has happened in terms of kind of the political shaping, it's come out of movement. It was a civil rights movement that has not only been a movement that was based and founded here in the Southern U.S., but it has had impact and implications all over the world. And so we saw ourselves as anchoring our work in the U.S., but also being able to be a part of the global community, because we think fundamentally that the ultimate goal is for us to make sure that we're protecting human rights, that even in the context of how we're engaging around politics and political engagement, that we would also see ourselves as being a part of the process of shaping the narrative around human rights around the globe. And that racism wasn't something that was just centered for the US, but that we see racism throughout the world. And part of our engagement has been through the International Decade of People of African Descent. We see at the establishment of a permanent forum, we were very instrumental as one of the organizations that wanted to make sure that there was a forum within the United Nations body that actually would lift up the issues and give the opportunity for organizations led by people of African descent, that we have the opportunity to really be able to leverage our voice, to be able to engage and inform and educate that body around the issues that we care about. We've also been doing a lot of work around lifting up our practices around organizing organizing and being able to train others around our organizing mechanism and the frame in which we've been using to create our message and to do very deep grassroots local organizing. So our work has really come out of expanding from just engaging in the political process here, but also being able to have a human rights framework that we're working in many different areas around globally, and also around, and we have a big focus around women's rights as well.
Great. So, today obviously is the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, right? So what on this occasion is the most important message you want to get across in relation to what we're experiencing globally, as you mentioned, with regards to racism?
I think I often ask people, no matter where they are, I ask them to close your eyes and imagine what would the world look like without racism. I want people to look at this not just from the problem, what problems that exist in racism. We've experienced this long enough that we know the pain that it inflicts and that it causes, but that there's an opportunity for us right now to actually think of something greater, that we can have a vision, that vision of what the global community will look like without racism, that should be our North Star, that fundamentally this is an opportunity of what the possibilities that exist when people are able to stand in the fullness of their power. And so that's the message that I have right now, that what the elimination of racism does, it gives us the space to be able for all human beings to be able to rise up and literally stand in the fullness of their whole human experience and their power. And what beautiful world can we create if we do that?
Well, these issues often come to the fore, as we've discovered in a previous conversation today, during times of military conflict, as we're seeing already these days. So what do you feel can be done specifically to address racism during these times?
That's an excellent question. I think ultimately what we have to recognize, which is why I keep making the connection around human rights, civil rights, all of those things, the root of them are the same around racism. I look at racism as this way of looking at a tree, that, a tree, you can cut the branches off. You can cut off some of the racial discrimination. You can cut off those different elements of it that exist that come out of racism, but that tree will still thrive unless you uproot it. And so we have to really be able to see when we're talking about, and Dr. King often would talk about, the three evils, and what he called it, the axis of evil, which was poverty, militarism, and racism. And we have to really see the interconnectedness of that anytime that fundamentally and that values that some human beings are less than other human beings, that there's some kind of hierarchy of value, and that we have to recognize that the same thing that is driving wars is the same thing that drives sexism, which is the same thing that drives racism. And if we are to uproot as we can this paradigm around racism, it also has this connectivity for literally creating a world that's more peaceful and that is more just and that is more inclusive and diverse.
All right. So thanks for sharing specifically your project. I want you to tell people that are listening today, how can they support Black Voters Matter Fund and Black Voters Matter Capacity Building Institute? How can they support?
They can go to our website, www.blackvotersmatterfund.org, blackvotersmatterfund.org, and then get all the information, or find us on all the social media channels, Black Voters Matter.
Thank you, Latosha Brown. Thank you so much.